section, I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges that we found in monitoring prevention. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's called the SAFA approach. That is an approach that we use in Uganda with many, many partners now around the region and the world around longer-term social norm change violence prevention work. I'm going to talk about two different tools that we've created. So there's a whole monitoring, evaluation, and assessment piece within SAFA that I'm going to be talking about two specific tools that we've created and I think are contributing to allowing activist organizations who don't really have technical research skills to be better at knowing how well they're doing. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about reflections. Okay? So I can't really see if you're like falling asleep or not, so if you are, you can let me know. Yeah?
Yep.
All right, or if I'm going too fast or anything where the sound breaks up, just let me know. Okay, so Bernadette will go on. Huh?
Yeah, we're on.
So, as I mentioned, Raising Voices really tries to do community-based violence prevention work, and we work with organizations that are small, that are rooted within their communities, that do not have research capacity, and are basically activist organizations. And so, while as Raising Voices, we are doing a very large randomized control study on SAFA. We're also doing a costing study with it. I'm not going to talk about that today. That's going on. We're actually just moving into the follow-up in January. But I'm going to be talking about the other tools and ways in which we have found some new approaches for monitoring. Basically, the challenge that we had for many, many years doing this work is that here we are doing prevention. It's a new and emerging field, and yet we don't really know how to do quality measurement of that. And so what would happen is we would do kind of what Nanta was saying. We know how many people come to the activity, we know how many activities we've done, but we don't know the quality or the impact of those activities. And so what that was meaning is that we weren't doing very responsive programming, and activist organizations often find that's very difficult to know how well they're doing in their programming. And it meant that activists doing this work kind of get quite tired of it because they don't actually know how well they're doing and they don't see impact, and that leads to frustration and burnout. And what would happen is activist organizations call the researchers, yeah? And they come, they stay for a week, they do an evaluation at the end of a project, and then they go home. And so activist organizations find themselves often without the technical skills to be able to do rigorous research, and so they find M&E difficult, and so they just don't do it. And what that means programmatically is that often organizations are sort of stuck in this chronic awareness raising phase, and they don't ever move beyond to that kind of all-important behavior change, which we're also trying to influence and impact. The other piece that is very difficult in longer-term prevention work is social norm change. So we're not working in a small group environment where you invite people to the workshop, they come, you can do a simple pre and post. This is diffuse. This is within a whole community. And that community could be geographically and population-based very diverse and large. And so how do you get a sense of what's going on at the community level in terms of your social norm change work? And there were not really any tools for which to do that. So for years, you know, we wrote case studies, we sort of took little examples, we tried to guess, really, about where and how our prevention work was doing in the community. Another challenge, and the last one I'll talk about, is that in a lot of prevention work, we sort of aim toward the end. But just as Nanta was saying, we don't really talk about process. So what does it mean? If we're saying to donors, to funders, to policymakers, and to communities, trust us, stick with us. We know we're going to do a long-term project here, and social norm change is going to happen at the end, okay, 5 years, whatever your time frame is. But we had no idea of where we were in the path of prevention to be able to say, here we are now shifting knowledge, we are now shifting some attitudes. We now know that some skills are shifting, and now we can say that some behavior is shifting. And so what we were doing in prevention often is kind of going toward the end goal. And yet, what that means is we weren't really doing very responsive programming. And again, if one of our feminist tenets is to not do harm, we couldn't really say that honestly we were doing that if we weren't better at knowing the impact and implications of our work along the way. Okay, I'll move on for a minute. So, we tried for years to figure out what to do, and it really took a long time, and we're still not there, but we now have some ideas. And so we have tried to develop new tools for activist organizations. We've tried to make them very simple, less technical, they're very user-friendly, and they try to quantify experiences or change. I think probably many of you have visited organizations and you ask about documentation or monitoring, they probably show you entire closets and stores full of box files with lots of data, which is very rich, I'm sure, but nobody really knows how to extract information from that. And so what we try to do in our tools is quantify what is usually very kind of qualitative and narrative. We're trying to move away from individual case studies and narratives, and yet recognizing that we have to develop these tools really not based on what is the gold standard for M&E, but if we really want to get better tools in the hands of activist organizations so that they can do it themselves, we have to really understand the capacity of staff and the dynamics in a community. So what is possible? What can a regular M&E person in a national NGO or even INGO or CBO, community-based organization, actually do? And yet recognizing that these are usually not very resourced organizations, and so we have to have it be integrated and not sort of take over programming. So the trick is to be solid and more rigorous, not completely 100%, here we are with gold standard, but more rigorous so that there are simple things introduced that make it such, around sampling, around trying to develop different scales so that it's easier for people. And then really to feed back into programming in real time, so we're not waiting 5 years to then be able to say, oh, actually, that didn't work so well. Yeah? All right. Okay, so I'm just going to talk one very short slide about SAFA. And SAFA is a program tool. It's a methodology that was developed by Raising Voices. That is kind of the core of our work at Raising Voices, is to develop ways in which organizations who are working on the ground can actually do better violence prevention. So we're not doing a string of the same kind of dramas for the next 3 years around awareness raising. So how can we actually develop and implement, help organizations implement programs that are more solid, that are theoretically sound, that are based on understanding within the field and research, and integrating that, yet making them so that, again, your regular program officer can pick it up and run with it. So that's why we developed SAFA, and SAFA means now in Swahili. Again, Nacho was saying we have to do this urgently, and I really agree. SAFA is also an acronym for the 4 phases of the approach. So starting with START, which is around trying to work on indicators around knowledge, awareness. So having a whole, you'll see in the image, you'll see 4 different folders. And each folder is chock full of different activities and ideas and strategies for working, again, across the circles of influence. So that's from looking at the ecological model and building that out, saying, okay, from individuals to their neighbors and friends and family, to the larger community around religious leaders and healthcare workers and police officers, and then to the larger community around local government and policy and media. And so within each folder of SAFA, there's a whole range of activities around all sorts of there's 4 different strategies to help reach all of those different kinds of people, because we are looking at social norm change. So within every phase that an organization systematically works through, there are different indicators for change, yeah? So in START, we're looking around knowledge. Awareness, we're looking around attitudes. Support, we're looking around skills, and it's all around skill building. And action is all around behavior. And I'm mentioning SAFA because it's very linked to the M&E piece, and the indicators are very, very linked to those 4 phases. Okay. So, as I said, the monitoring assessment within SAFA is quite large. So we do process, monitoring, and then impact. Yeah, monitoring around impact. Oops, sorry. So we've got two main tools within the process. That's community activity report form and a community activist monthly tracking. I'm only going to talk in this presentation around the community activity report form, and then impact. We do rapid assessment surveys and then an outcome tracking tool. And I'm going to talk about outcome tracking tool because those are the more kind of new that we're trying to develop. Okay. Okay. Great. Sorry. Okay. Here we go. So this next, you'll just see the form, and I think there's some handouts there maybe for you too, but this is what the form looks like, just so you have it in your head, what it actually looks like. And there's the basic numbers that are gathered, as well as this whole section around ranking. And if we go to the next slide for a minute, I'll just talk a little bit about what it is. So it's designed to monitor the process of program implementation so that we know how we're doing along the way. And we have built-in mechanisms for quality control every step along the way. Why we use it? Just that, yeah, assessing the quality of activities and assessing the gaps in programming before we get too far, and also to be able to really strengthen the skills of staff as well as CAs or community activists. And so those are, community members are like very, very prominent in the work of SAFA. They actually spearhead the activities in the community. And so how are they doing, and how are we making sure that we're assessing their capacity and their strengths and their weaknesses so that then we can respond to that and do better training. So how to do it? You just, person could be anybody. It doesn't have to be somebody with a lot of skills and experience. It can be just a program officer, assistant program officer. We have some really turned on interns who do it. And you fill in the basic details of the activity. Who was there, how many men, how many women, what kind of activity. But then the important you part, and so that's what we always do, right? That's the counting. We got that. But then the next part is what we've included and changed quite a bit. And so this is, again, trying to quantify more qualitative assessment. So we're trying to do two things. We're trying to rank the response of the community to the activity itself. So how are they responding? Is this even something that is slightly interesting and engaging, or not so much? And how that activity is being facilitated. And so those are the two pieces that previously we would write, okay, the community activist, you know, maybe had a little bit of a hard time summarizing, but generally he was really respectful to the group. It was all qualitative. And what that meant is when you collect even 10 of those forms a week, you're completely bogged down already. And we enter that data into a very, very simple access screen. And so the data is very, very used and accessible we do it on a monthly basis. And when to use the form, it's completed by all staff whenever they're monitoring activities or mentoring activists. So they can use it all the time. So we'll just move on to the next slide for a minute. So what information does it produce? The basic numbers, as I said, the types of activities and where you did it, the quality of the activity, the quality of the facilitator's skills, and then there is a qualitative section, so we're not losing that entirely, around, okay, documenting successes, challenges, community comments, getting some actual quotes from community members. And I'm going to show you just a few slides. The next 3 slides are around the kind of data that it produces. So this first one is just basic numbers. So, you know, I'm not going to spend time on that, but it's just showing you can do all sorts of, you know, number crunching. Very, very simple in Access to just come up with your basic numbers of how many people you're reaching, who's doing the activities, things like that. And I just included one, but you can run a whole range of queries within Access and come up with a lot of information. But the second one, this is, so I'm on the activity analysis screen, Bernadette, this is the piece that has really helped us improve the level of and the quality of the activities. So on the bottom, along the bottom axis, you'll see the names of the activities. I don't know if they're too small on the screen, but they're things like a quick chat and a community drama, community conversation, poster facilitation, basic activities that are in SAFA. And what we do is, you'll see on the side, the little key, it tells what we're looking for. Yeah, so we're looking at how well people were mobilized. Is it relevant to the phase? Were people even interested? Did men and women participate? Was it just men? Was it just women? What was the general response? And was it exciting? Would you sit through it? We often see, you probably have also seen, you go to an activity and it's so boring. You wouldn't sit there, but we expect community members to sit there politely and participate and then go home and take time out of their real life to kind of sit through something that's really boring. So it really challenges staff and community activists to say, hey, am I making this a dynamic activity? So from this, you'll see on here a little bit about how people are responding to the activities. So we can see that the third bars over, the community conversation, people are not really enjoying that activity, kind of at all. And they're not really enjoying the radio drama either. But we do see that the film screening, people are really turning up, they're very interested, they find it really exciting, they find it really great. Same with quick chats. And so we are able to see, is that because of facilitation, that they're not really enjoying those activities, or because people don't like them, they're kind of boring, they're not speaking to the people that we're trying to reach. And so this has really allowed us to be able to say, let's just not keep going and doing 500 dramas, but let's stop and see what people like, what is really working out there, and so that we can then be changing and tailoring our programming toward the interests of the community. So I'll move to the next one, Veronica. The next one is around facilitation skills. And again, people just sit in the community and rank according to these. Content mastery, probing, positive feedback, respect to the group. And this is a really important tool for us now of how to really assess the skills of the activists. And so we can see that from this graph that people are really not doing very well in summarizing activities. So there's this pretty good activity, but then nobody's kind of summarizing, so we have no idea what kind of take-home ideas people are going home with. Or they're really not having a very easy time focusing the discussion. Somebody talks about, okay, you know, somebody in an activity, we might be talking about gender, but then it switches over to sexual abuse or whatever. It's like you can see that CVs are having, community activists are having a hard time bringing in the conversation and focusing it. So then what we can do in our programming and in our training with community activists is to say, hey, oh, this has been really tricky across the board, pretty much for all the activities, how can we respond? And so as you can see, we feel like we're being a little bit more responsible and ethical when we're actually doing programming to make sure that we're spending all this time and energy and we're doing it to the best of our ability. I'll move on for a minute. So just briefly, how we use the information. We collate this monthly, and then we do a session, a feedback session with all staff and with all community activists. So the staff get a longer version, and the community activists get a smaller version. But it helps us identify gaps in implementation and training. It's providing feedback on a monthly and quarterly basis, so actually staff know how well they're doing. So if they've done a series of training with community activists around take-home ideas and how to introduce and talk about take-home ideas, and yet we're still seeing that people are not really getting very far on that, then we know we're not doing the training well, or something's amiss. So it does shape the ideas for staff training and community activist skill building. It's really been amazing. We at first didn't share it with community activists. We thought, oh, they won't get it. Like, it'll be confusing, and they love it. They want to know every month, like, you know, how are we doing here? How are we prepared? Did we reach enough people? Are our skills getting better? And so they really, and we can even disaggregate it according to community or village, and they love that because then they can see, oh, this is how we're really doing. And it made them, you know, they're not paid, and it's a volunteer. They're just activists. They're people who care about the work and about the issue of violence in the community. And this has been a real motivating factor, that they actually feel like they're doing something and we can show them that we're caring enough to actually track it as well. And then again, developing practical action plans. Every month after the session with the activists or with the staff, come up with a very detailed list of this is how we need to make it better, our programming better, this is how we need to respond to the issues that are coming up. So that's the community activity report form. So there are some limitations and challenges, like everything. Staff, we found we have to really work with staff to help them not rank kindly for the people that we like. We actually had to add in one around effort because we were getting like 3s and 4s, and I would go to an activity and I would be like, that wasn't really that good. And they were like, oh, but they tried. And so we thought, okay, people really feel guilty about ranking poorly because they really put in effort. So we just added another column around, okay, rank effort. And then that really has allowed them to rank more honestly around their actual performance, not just what nice people they are. There is a tendency to rank 3s, so it's not, you know, as we said, this is not a hugely rigorous piece. This is helping organizations gain a little bit more knowledge. And it's a limited scale, so the number of staff that can go out, that's how many forms you're going to be able to fill. And this one is not systematically sampled. You go out because most organizations don't have a whole M&E team that they can dispatch to all sorts of sample activities. This one is not systematically sampled. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the impact monitoring, and I'm going to talk about this outcome tracking tool. And I put the image up because sometimes it's a little bit hard for people to imagine what it would look like, but you'll see and it's broken down into 4 sections around the same key indicators within SAFA. So knowledge, attitudes, skills, and behaviors. And within each of those, we pared it down. It was very hard, but we pared it down to the most essential. And what an M&E person does, or a senior level staff person, is they sit in an activity and they rank across this spectrum. You see the 1 to the 5, the arrow across the top. They try to rank where the community is in terms of resistance to or acceptance of the ideas within the activity. Yeah? So I'll move to the next one, Brenda, so people just at least have that picture in their head. So I mentioned what it is, just monitoring the impact. Again, at a community level, so we are not going one-on-one and asking people, what do you think about this? Do you know this? We are observing, so we sit very quietly in activity and we rank along the spectrum. We are using it because we felt like it was very hard to systematically judge how we're shifting in terms of, hey, are men still blaming, are our community members still blaming women for violence against them? When you go to an activity and qualitatively you sit there and you're like, oh, well, this person said this, it was very, very difficult for us to get a real sense of how people were feeling or shifting within those. So this has allowed us to really assess those shifts along the levels, the areas of indicators, and identify problems. So one problem was in Kampala around blaming women. It took us a long time to actually shift to that one, but then you can actually see it shifted. And for a long time we knew that we couldn't move on from that we had to keep going until then we were able to see a shift along that one. So I mentioned how to use it, and this one is completed by a staff that's a little bit more senior because it does require a very careful ear and somebody to be able to understand and make sense of community comments. And this one actually is systematically sampled. And so at the beginning of the month, we get a list of all the activities that the community activists think they're going to do, and we just systematically sample them, and we go to those activities very directly. Because we don't want to just go to the community activists who are doing the best work or who need the most support. We want to make sure that we're trying to introduce a little bit less bias into that. Okay, so I'll show you some results for that. So for example, we knew in January this year, before all of our election craziness happened, For challenge, we were at a 3.9, and for attitude at about a 3.5. Skills, which had just begun, that phase had just begun, was around a 3.2, and around behavior a 2.3. So we could see that we were slowly shifting knowledge and attitude, but we weren't really making much headway on behavior yet. And with big steps within SAFA, we weren't kind of there yet. And the next slide, if I can show that for a minute, is around tracking where we've been throughout the project. So you can see in September 2008, we were worried. It was, you go and you just think, could there be more backlash? It was intense. Like any time you start a community youth program around violence prevention, you get a lot of resistance, even though, the approach is very positive and it's all benefits-based and all of that around, just very, very much in line with some of the philosophy around we can. It's still, when you look at that community and you hear the comments and the drama, pretty much nobody is agreeing with what we're saying. And so you can see over time, it hasn't been completely systematic, and some reasons we sort of know and other reasons we don't. But we've been able to see that we are making progress along the key areas of impact that we're trying to make, along those 4 key areas: knowledge, attitude, skills, and behaviors. So I'll move to the next one, Brenda. I know my time is short. How we use this information. The outcome tracking has been really, really helpful to us. We use it very much to inform our programming decisions. We see what issues are really entrenched. So I showed you kind of utility and also progress across, but we can pull out something. So we pulled out, for example, the one on women playing, and we could see that even though other issues within attitude were shifting, that one wasn't. So we knew we had to keep working on that. So we know what areas need more focus and which communities actually are showing more resistance than others. And this is also really important, that usually we just kind of do broad stroke. And that's kind of, a lot of times, unfortunately, what happens in prevention. Because it's so big and you're doing so much in terms of community level work, that how do you actually tailor things? But you can when you actually have the information. The outcome tracking form informs decisions on when to conduct a rapid assessment survey. So I didn't talk about that because that is a pretty basic, it's 35 questions on the same things: knowledge, attitude, skills, and behaviors. But then for a long time, we would just sort of do those assessments. And we would have no triangulation of data to be able to say, oh, I think it's about time to do this. We were sort of guessing. And so now when we see those indicators shifting within the outcome tracking form, we can then say, oh, actually maybe it's about time to do a rapid assessment. And then for SAFA, what that means is moving perhaps to the next phase. So it's a really important tool. So it has helped us know how we're doing rather than just what we're doing. We have a good sense of that, but it's very hard to figure out how. Whether we're shifting on the outcome. And again, then the team can problem solve. If you don't really know what the problems are, where the sticking points are, you can't solve it. And so this just allows us to do that. So Bernadette, I'll move to the next one. Okay, so some limitations and challenges. One thing is that we have found for the outcome tracking form that you do need somebody who knows violence. You need somebody who's able to sit in the community, and no one in the community is going to say, oh, I actually think women are to blame for violence. But they'll say, well, actually, she stayed out really late, and so, but she's not supposed to because she's a woman, so what else are we supposed to do? That's her fault. So you have to be able to not hear the exact statement, but still be able to understand and rank across that spectrum. And so we do find that we do need people who know violent work. Much more than the community outcome, the community activity report form. So that's the issue, that the staff need to be able to link the comments with the indicator. There is bias, if you're sitting in that activity, you could be surrounded, in back of you could be lots of people who are very kind of positive and they're doing great, and there's people over there on the side whispering and they're very, very negative. So again, it's not an absolute, it's not perfect, but it gives us a sense. And again, what we are measuring is the community members who participate in the activities. So if you're not in the activity, we don't really know. And so we try to do a really wide range of activities, but still there is inherent bias because we are just in this do in hearing those community members at activities. Okay, got one more slide. Okay, so just overall reflections. That, we often think we need to, hire the consultants, hire the research firm to come in and do it. But what that has meant for years is that activist organizations sort of said, we can't do it. We don't know how to do it. It's like, we don't have the capacity to do it. We don't even have the money to do it. So we're not going to do it. And what that did was really contribute to poor quality programming. And so these are tools that activist organizations who kind of looked at us and said, we can't do M&E, really. We're just going to hire a consultant at the end. They are now doing it, and they really feel empowered, and they feel like we actually know what we're doing, and that they are much more engaged intellectually into the work, rather than, let's go do the drama, get our work plan done. But they actually now are much more kind of in touch with the dynamics, and they understand how much their work and the activities actually do impact people. So it's really helped organizations be more self-reflective, more critical of what they're doing, and just more engaged in the process. It does require time and commitment from an organization. So that's just there, yeah? That we have a full-time M&E person, other groups don't have a full-time M&E person, but their staff do it, but you do need to have somebody to go out, have somebody to look at the sample. Even if it's very simple, we're going to highlight every 8 activity on the list, but still you need somebody to do it and to enter it into a database. So sometimes people think, oh gosh, it's too time consuming. It is time consuming, but I think really ultimately it's more efficient because we are doing better quality programming, and that's really important in terms of ethics and in terms of money and all sorts of other things. So as I said, it's improved the quality of programming. And then, as we more and more, I think in a good way, we're talking about prevention and recognizing how prevention and social norm change work really is key and really has to happen. And so if we are saying that, and we are promoting that, and we are funding that, then we really have to be able to demonstrate our progress, and we have to be accountable to community members, to our donors, and to ourselves as we do this work. And these new tools have allowed us, and I think other organizations that will be in it, to be able to do that. Yeah. So I think I'm all set. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thanks very much for a fantastic presentation zoomed in. Just to get an idea of the sort of time scale over which you've worked with these tools and the lifeline you see for them. How long do you think you'll use the same tools, and what will happen then? That would be interesting. Thanks.
Sure. Do you want me to answer one by one? Shall I answer for it?
Which would you prefer, Laurie? Do you want to take a few?
Fine, I can answer. It's fine. So that's a great question, and you'll actually see, if anyone's seen SAFA, the tools that we published in 2009 are pretty much completely different than they are now. And we thought in 2009, oh, we're doing great and we've really made headway, but we really have, it's completely been an organic process that every single day we go out and we learn something new. And so we have been developing them probably since about 2007, I guess, in like a really testing them way. We published SAFA in 2009. The tools in SAFA right now are really different that were published in 2009. So this latest iteration, the latest revised version we've done, I think, in April this year. And we're just constantly learning and constantly trying to figure out how to be more responsive, what problems other organizations are having when they're using them, and to just try to keep making them better and better. And so we keep introducing, the outcome tracking form originally had a scale of 4, now it has a scale of 5, but we keep tinkering. And I guess we'll keep doing so. Now there's probably about 30 organizations in the region using them seriously. And so we're getting a lot of really good information and feedback about what they're finding useful and what they're really struggling with.
Okay, thank you. Anya.
Hi, Laurie, it's Anya Doody here from Irish Aid. I mean, I think that was a really good presentation. I think it shows that you know, it is possible to measure change in this kind of work, which of course is a huge challenge. But it shows what you need as well, and the level of the need for skilled staff, and you clearly have very skilled and committed staff. The need for an investment in you know, strong information management, a commitment from senior management. All these things are evident from your presentation. I'm interested that you say that you know, the feedback has been very positive from your volunteers and staff. I thought there would be a risk around a backlash from staff and community activists around, I suppose, the risk around increasing kind of too many forms, and increasing kind of bureaucratization of what we're doing. Those kind of risks. I'd be interested to see if you are getting that, any of that from your staff or volunteers. Irish Aid is supporting the evaluation that Raising Voices are carrying out as part of this process, and it would be interesting, just, I know you're not going to talk about it in detail, but just a brief comment on how this links with the evaluation, I think would be useful. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I think I got that. It was kind of blurry in some parts, but basically, I think what you're asking is around how staff are finding it, like what's their reaction, and if they're feeling burdened by it or not. Did I get you right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, you know. Okay, so staff were previously, most staff of most organizations go out and they have to write a little, even if it's a one-page, they write a one-page narrative about it, like, okay, this many people showed up and this. They love the ranking. They think it like completely saves their time, and they have found that really, really easier. And so they've been really receptive to that. Staff only do the community activity report form. And so it typically takes them about 10 minutes to do it. And as opposed to much longer for the narrative report. And so we haven't had much sort of, you know, resistance or, you know, we haven't had much resistance from staff doing it. The community activists only do very, very simple number tracking. So that they don't have an issue with that. Some don't read and some don't write, so their children help them, or they don't do it, or we help them do it. So that, the data is always, you can never be 100% sure, because we don't select activists based on literacy, just on their interest and compassion for the issue. And so for us also, anytime we do M&E and staff kind of groan the minute you raise it, right? But then they've actually seen it's helped them so much in their programming, and I think it's been really motivating to them, just as it has for the community activists, that they actually see that this is going well, this isn't, they're going to be doing the work anyway. This one of our staff, Davis, he told me, you know what, we got to do these trainings anyway. We might as well make them so that they're really doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so I think staff kind of see it as something positive. Some of the organizations that we are further away from, they're not used to doing any documentation or any monitoring of activities. So it is something to get used to, that they have to fill in a form at the end of the day. And definitely, you know, not everybody loves that. But because most people, I think, you know, a lot of the staff doing this work really care about this work, and it is really because they believe in women's rights and social justice, and they care about this work and they want to do it. So even though they might not love writing the report, they've been doing it, and it's what you said around senior management support, being, you know, really positive about it and showing the feedback and not just collecting it and screwing it away, and actually sharing it. It's helped a lot, and so I think it's just something we have to push back on in a kind and friendly but strong way, that we have to, as activist organizations, be documenting, we have to be monitoring, we have to be more accountable. And we, you know, a lot of organizations, you know, haven't really been for years. And so I think that there's a real recognition, especially within program managers and leaders of organizations, that that's necessary. So I think people are pretty open to it. About the evaluation, yes. I'm laughing because we are right now trying to recruit for the follow-up survey that's happening starting in January, and we got over 3,000 applications for about 30 posts. So it's like we're just drowning in CVs at the moment. But it is a randomized control trial, and we did the baseline in 2008. And we have been doing the programming in those communities and doing the M&E in those communities. And the M&E is actually, the rapid assessments that we do have actually hugely impacted and shaped the follow-up survey. So many questions have gotten so much better because we've done 5 rapid assessment surveys right at this point. And so every time we do those, they feed into how we're understanding how to translate, how to ask questions, what not to ask, how to ask it. And so the monitoring has very, very much strengthened the development of the survey and strengthening of the survey. And I think it has also, the monitoring has also, when you do a trial, it's, well, I'm not a researcher. I come from an activist background, although now I kind of feel like the last few years have been a quick course in research. But it's a little bit of a scary experience. You don't really know. You're putting your stuff out there and you hope for the best. You don't know what the results are going to be. We still don't know, but my colleague Tina and I, who we work very closely together on it as on the programming side, we feel a little bit more comfortable, I think, going into the follow-up survey because we are seeing statistically significant shifts in the rapid assessments. We aren't asking around behaviors in the rapid assessments because we can't ask personal information like that, but we are asking around social acceptability and attitudes and knowledge and skill sets and levels of activism, and that has shifted. And so, we're hoping for the best, trying to be bravehearted at the same time.
Thank you. Question here, and just to clarify, the mic isn't for amplification in this room, it's for recording purposes and for the video, just in case anyone was wondering why the mic isn't working and we're still insisting on using it. So, question here.
Okay, hi Laurie, sorry for the late. My name is Frances Sonny from, oh, sorry, love. Hi. Hi Laurie, sorry I'm late. My name is Frances Sonny from the Women's Integrated Network. I'm sorry I missed most of your presentation, but what caught my attention is the success you recorded, and I was just wondering if it was possible to maybe simplify the template and circulate it. Would you be favorably disposed to doing that? Thank you.
You can circulate it.
Sorry, Brenda, I didn't understand all of that. Circulate something, but I'm not sure what.
The template?
Yeah, template.
The template forms, and I think we have some samples here, and maybe you can adapt them yourselves for your own uses.
We keep putting them up on the web, and if you actually know organizations who would find it useful, like a lot of organizations are adapting them. We're told, our thing is let's just make programming better, and so all of our stuff is open and free use, and we put everything out there that we can. We even share the screens because some organizations they just don't know how to make a screen and access to enter the data. So all of that is readily available, and so if you want the soft copy, just email me, and I'm happy to share that with you.
Okay, thank you. We'll keep any other questions towards the end now, please, because we better move on to Carol's presentation. Laurie, thank you very much for joining us and for your honesty, really, about how and why and what your uses are, and the imperfect science, I suppose, that we're all still learning about and trying to improve. So thank you so much for joining us.